Hi everyone. Today we're talking about the implications of COVID-19 on driver training. Peter and I are here with Carly Brookfield, who's the Chief Executive of the Driving Instructors Association, and with Howard Redwood, who's the DIA's Head of Road Safety. So Carly, the assumption at the moment seems to be that driver training can't really happen at the moment due to the social distance guidance. Is there any training still going on at the moment?
Yes, there certainly is. Whilst I wouldn't encourage widespread adoption of training again within fleets, I do think that fleets have to consider that they have to balance the risks of COVID-19 infection with the other public health risk of road safety. So I would advise fleets to get further advice on what training they can do, because it is accessible. Now, they could just default to some level of virtual and contactless training, as I call it, but that's not going to be sufficient measured against the risks of the individual drivers. So get some advice on what in-vehicle training you can do and how that is safely managed, because although normal training doesn't allow for social distancing, many other frontline operations that we have to undertake at this time don't either, and we know that we have to do them. So there are some safe training protocols that we'll talk about later that are able to enable a fleet to do more training than it perhaps thinks it can at this time.
And just maybe a quick question, if I can, for Howard. I mean, we're seeing, from what Carly, you just said, that obviously there is restrictions to access to certain training, but there still is a desire and a need for it. We're seeing a lot of companies who have essential drivers looking at a major influx of new drivers to the roles, maybe an unfamiliar role. I mean, Howard, what would your advice and guidance be to companies where they're looking at that scenario?
Just ensure that the training they can give is conducive to the roles that they are asking these people to do. It's very important that that takes place, because some of these people are coming into the industry for the first time, probably not from a driving background before, and they've got a lot of things like familiarisation of their vehicle and routes to get used to, which takes some time to settle down to do. It's difficult for them. It's difficult for the employer as well. And really, they've got to find a way of the two of them working together to try and make to meet the ends of what is required in terms of the throughput of whatever they're trying to deliver, especially the food companies that have got a very, very big task of delivering home delivery stuff at the moment. It's a big throughput of staff there, and they have got a challenge, and they're just going to make sure that the people they're taking in, they've been vetted, etc. Just give them time to settle down.
I think that's a really good point, Howard, and you illustrate some of the, some really important areas where training does have to happen with those fleets that are certainly recruiting new drivers. And Carly, you mentioned before about how you do that training safely. So, in previous videos, we've discussed the current sort of sanitization issues within vehicles and the challenges where you have two or more people in a single vehicle. How do driving instructors manage to deliver training and take make allowances for the social distancing and trying to reduce the chance of infection?
In a nutshell, you can't achieve social distancing. And I think if you try and tackle it on that principle, then you won't do any training at all, which, as I said before, creates the other public health risk of improperly and inadequately trained drivers going out there and causing major road risk as well. So we designed a registration process for driver trainers. And as part of that, to allow them to go out and support key workers, as part of that, they have to go through a series of training protocols and how to do training safely. And that's adopted from DVSA's own examining protocols that they've obviously had to bring into testing as well. And they go through things like not just the obvious, like PPE, sanitization of the vehicle. It's also about the protocols you adopt, ensuring that the pupil is healthy. So that's about calling the pupil the day before, an hour before, and ascertaining their state of health. It's about not getting into the vehicle and standing 2 meters away and ascertaining their state of health again. It's about making sure that everybody's clear that the lesson or the training session will be halted if there is a risk that that person has been exposed to COVID-19 in any way. So there's some common sense steps, and then there's some steps that are specific to the training environment that we've tried to encapsulate in the training we're delivering to driver trainers as a whole at the moment.
I mean, that applies obviously for the commercial vehicle drivers where they would normally be undertaking their CPC training. And perhaps this again is a question for yourself, Howard. I mean, this is going to create a backlog problem when people are returning to work. I mean, obviously we recognise why it's been suspended for the interim. Again, what would there be guidance and recommendations to companies when they're looking potentially at that backlog?
Really, Peter, you've got to be careful of this word suspended. It's not really suspended. It has been put to one side to a degree where the drivers between the 1st of March and the 31st of September, if their CPC has expired within those dates, they are still allowed to drive, but they must be back together with their full 35 hours by the 1st of October. So this means they are able to do the training for CPC in that 6-month window. The problem that the backlog will be is if employers don't sort out the training regime for this and keep a flow of people training to ensure they've got the drivers when they want them. Because a problem that will take place is that at the end of September, going into October, October the 1st is actually on a Thursday. So if you look at the times when a working week starts on a tachograph, anybody driving on a tachograph at the beginning of the week has got to continue monitoring their hours, even if they go down to 3.5-ton vehicle for the remainder of the week. So if they haven't got their CPC sorted out for the 1st of October, they're driving illegally, even though they're in a 3.5-ton van. So this is a situation, and that's the problem for the following week as well, because the industry works on driving fortnights. So we've got a problem for some considerable, a little bit of time that overlaps after the 1st of October as well. So the backlog will take place if plans don't take place. And that's going to be the industry's biggest problem. There are agencies out there that can do online training and get these 35 hours up together. But for the companies that are already working, they have to understand that CPC, if it's done especially on a Saturday, forms other work. Now, all drivers who are at their home base must have their weekly rest. It cannot be reduced to a 24-hour period if they're at base. So if they go off and do their CPC on a Saturday to try and keep out of the way of the Monday to Friday regime, they could actually be losing some of their rest period for an end of week rest.
Okay, thank you. Very, yeah. Okay.
I think that's a really important issue. I think the takeaway lesson from that is similar to the backlog that we're going to see in vehicle servicing and maintenance, that the only way around that is to plan ahead properly and make sure that your vehicles and drivers are all prepared for these looming deadlines, and that you don't suffer disruption because you're not adequately prepared.
And if I may butt in on that one to reiterate the point, it's not just about the paucity of driver hours that will be available in that scenario for the training to take place. You're also going to have a scarcity of trainers in some degree, because some might be off sick and still self-isolating because COVID-19 will still be in our community. Others will not have returned to work because we're already starting to get indications that some trainers are very fearful of going back to work and exposing themselves, and may decide to very much cut down their hours or not go back to work for a while at all. So I think, it's about that demand and supply issue that is always going to be frustrating for lots of industries coming out of this situation, that there might not just be the supply of training available.
Yeah, I think there's lots for fleets to take account of there, and again, preparing for that as well is going to be really important. So let's now look at where we can deliver and need to deliver essential training within where fleets are recruiting, how we can go about doing driver induction in the current time.